At this point, we're going to talk specifically about Notebook LM. Notebook LM is a Google product, and for individuals that have Gmail or Google Suite, something of that nature, Notebook LM is free for the basic users. Now I have a slightly different interface that I have, but the normal Notebook LM looks very much similar to what I have here right now. In this particular case is the last name of the individual is Chittister. This is actually a real life person. I have her permission. She's my granddaughter. And it's a case that I'm handling right now here in the state of Indiana. And I've taken a couple of things and put into Notebook LM as I'm working from Notebook LM for purposes of this particular case. And so far, I have very limited what's called sources. If you look over on the left-hand side, you'll see just a couple different PDFs that are in here, and those are considered sources. Whatever case that you may be working on is you want to have all your sources put in there, and they can go in the form of PDFs, Google Docs, web, text, YouTube, any type of site out there on the internet. Basically, Notebook LM has really picked up its game over the last probably 6 to 12 months to where is I could not probably work in any given day without having the use of Notebook LM. Now, in this particular case, is the left-hand side is where all your sources will be. One of the problems you have to keep in mind is with artificial intelligence, it has the tendency to hallucinate. Hallucination is not a good thing. In fact, hallucination can cause attorneys to get into trouble with their bars and Rule 11s and things of that nature. So be very, very careful when working with artificial intelligence that you follow very strict protocol. And probably the theme of the case would be verify everything because Notebook is actually one of the better sources to utilize than some of the other AIs because Notebook is using Gemini. Gemini is their version of, say, ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or one of those other LLMs. Gemini is the LLM of Google. And what Google's LLM Gemini will do will only look at your sources and it will verify your sources. If you look up here in this document, you'll see there's some footnotes. Those footnotes, if I run my cursor over it, it'll give me the little excerpt, and then down at the bottom, it'll tell me exactly where that came from. Another thing you'll want to do is make for sure that you name your sources so they're easy not only for you to sort through them, but believe it or not, easy for AI to sort through them. Will act kind of like as your second brain, if you will, and you're developing and creating your second brain by putting your sources in there. Now, if you're going to chat with Notebook, here in the middle is where we chat. Notebook used to erase all the chats every time that you left it and came back to it. Now it maintains all the chats. You have to actually really want to get rid of the chats in order for it to go away. I customarily will keep all the chats, so it's there. Now, another thing is on the right-hand side is what's called the studio. If you see up here is I'm showing you the studio. The attachment that I have associated with mine, I have a few more bells and whistles that comes in play. Like I can export it right out of this and don't have to go a couple of different steps to do that. But nonetheless, is that here's your studio where we can create different things. And I'm generating an audio overview right now, which if it gets done while I'm taping this session, is we'll have an opportunity to hear this. And the great thing about the audio overview is really what Notebook LM probably first and foremost got really known for, because it's in a podcast, in the one I am generating, in a podcast format where two AI individuals or entities are talking back and forth with each other. And on some cases, I'll use that audio overview to listen to with my clients very early in their case to give me a different perspective of it, because I'm listening to some of the smartest entities known to mankind, which is AI, and how AI perceives this particular case based upon, if I want to, is I can click on this button right there, and I can actually generate what I want this audio overview to focus on. Over here, we still have similar things as we had the video overview, which does a pretty decent job. I'm not as impressed with it as I am down here. With the audio overview, we have mind map. If I click on the mind map, it'll generate mind map, and mind map does generate a lot quicker, and we'll look at that here in a second. I can generate reports, flashcards, quiz if I'm a student type, and can be very, very helpful. I've already created a slide deck, and I'm going to show you how incredibly awesome this slide deck is. Doesn't take a ton of time. It definitely doesn't take as long as an audio overview, but it does a really nice job. Now, I've asked this to do a mind map. So in my mind map, I come over here to this. As now, what's happened is this is my Chittister's medical case. Here's her patient profile, clinical status, exhaustive treatment options, proposed treatment plan, and legal insurance barriers. Is that now, if I want to kind of get a general overview, and not even just general, ultimately, as I keep expanding this, I'll get to one point where I can actually go back into the chat and ask very specific questions. But if I just want to do a very quick overview, we can see that she's 20 years old. Type 1 diabetes. Here's one of her diagnoses. This is what she's had since birth, and a few other things that's going on with her. If I want to get the current clinical status, I click on this button here, and I can get everything that's going on with her right now. And Maya's been in the hospital for most of the month of January at this point in time. We can see there's been exhausted treatment options that have been done. Pharmacology failures, procedural, surgical barriers have taken place. Proposed treatment plan. There's been some different proposed treatment plans, but right now the big one is basically going to Mayo Clinic. And if we look down here to the legal barriers, current insurance blocked for Mayo, required switch to father's insurance, and pending court hearing for transfer. As I want to get out of this section here and go back over here in just a second, I'll get out here and then we'll slip that down. Now, if I want to get back to the studio, which is what I want to get back to, I'm going to click on that button back to the studio. Now, early on in this case, when I took it on and I wanted to try to better understand the medical reports, I had created a presentation, but I wanted to understand the medical reports. I did an infographic. I just absolutely love the infographics. And this infographic is one that was generated by Notebook LM, was generated in very, very fast fashion. And it gives you an overview of important details by looking at this chart. And if you're one like I am, is that I really understand a lot better when I see a picture. And this clearly does a picture, and it does a phenomenal job. Now I'm going to slip back out of this, and I'm going to go next. I'm going to go to basically this slide presentation. Now the slide presentation is fantastic. I'll tell you that much. And so what I've done here, this is in the state of Indiana, county of Monroe. Indiana University, the home of the national football champions in 2026. Very proud of that. This is in Ray, the marriage of Barbie Joe Lamb Chittister and Ryan Chittister. There's the calls number. It's a medical status update and treatment necessity report. And so as I go through this report here, is that it will actually advance to each one of the screens. But what I'll do is just to kind of because of the time element we have here today, is that if I want to go step by step, kind of like in a slideshow presentation, this would allow me to do that. Now, keep in mind is not only does this generate phenomenal presentation, some of these slides are actually more than acceptable for me as a lawyer to use them at trial. Now, this right here would be problematic for hearsay, but if I have this doctor, and the plans would be to get the doctor to testify in court, I could bring this up as a slide, both in my opening statement and definitely in my closing statement, if the doctor did actually testify verbatim to that report, which would be no reason for me to expect that he would not do so. Now, the barrier to care is insurance, the current status, coverage blocked, father's insurance is the solution, and if we can get through that door, Mayo Clinic is where we plan on going. Then the treatment plan switch, and this generally will spit out probably normally about 10, 15 pages, if you will, but again, does a phenomenal job. Now, is that as far as other things to do, is I ran a summary of the clinical case. This spit out probably in less than 20 seconds. It broke down the patient profile and clinical context. Objective clinical evidence, the crisis dashboard, then we have the pharmacy exhaustion, psychological constraints, procedural outcomes and surgical contraindictions, and current stabilization strategy, referral objectives, and quarterly care mandate. All of this stuff here was created by Notebook LM. Again, Notebook LM does an incredibly fantastic job. Now, one thing about Notebook LM is I also use Google. If I go over here to Google, and hopefully that shifted gears to do so, in Google now I've started a legal strategy, and in that legal strategy I've started doing some prompts, and these prompts are starting to generate questions that I plan on using at trial. And in this particular case, I did the following prompt is to provide a comprehensive trial strategy, expanded 4 prompts into specific high impact examination questions, and designed for a tight cross examination favoring leading questions that control the witness and prevent him from offering lengthy explanations. Now, this establishing financial and policy capacity, the medical necessity and Mayo Clinic barrier, the parental duty versus public burden, impeachment, discretionary spending, and a closing sequence and next step. The thing to keep in mind here, all the stuff I just showed you here was generated by AI based upon some prompts that I actually put into there. Now, next it says next steps for trial prep. I can draft a trial brief. I can generate a set of direct examination questions for Barbie. And in fact, that's what I want. So now in the context window, I'm going to say generate direct, and it's a little slow here today, exam questions for Barbie. Now I'll hit the carriage return. I've been basically working with this long enough. It knows my style, and it's got um, months and months of me, if you will, as part of its operating system. And so now what's happened here is that it's now gone through and it says the objective is to establish the urgency and the limitations of the current facility. And now these are questions. Now, I generally like to have my questions in numerical order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it is I'm going to say regenerate, and put in numerical order such as 1, 2, 3, and so forth. And so now we're going to ask it to actually put it into a different format. And in a perfect world, it will do that for me. And as you can see in this world, it did not. Is that I wanted numbers to be there. But once I take this, and I'll show you here in a second, I'm going to take it over to Claude. And Claude's going to do a fantastic job for it. I've not been real impressed overall, if you will, with Gemini. But Gemini is definitely one of the major players out there in the market. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say regenerate, outline, direct exam questions to Barbie. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste in what I've done already. As I pasted it in, it appears that it's taken in a form of an additional attachment. And in fact, it will do so. If I wanted to put more files in this case, and the one file that I actually have that's a real file on Barbie and Maya is expansive with tons of files that's over in this section, including instructions and even memory inputted into it. But what I wanted to do is show you real quickly is how quickly basically Claude will go to work. Now I'm in Claude, and what Claude will do, it will set here in a second and it will start telling you what it's going through. And look how fast Claude has taken the revised draft of examination questions for Barbie and put it exactly in the format that I want. This format allows me to copy and paste into a Word document and basically go after it and put some really good stuff out in front of the court. Now, if I want to do cross-examination, and I do of Ryan, so I'm going to say cross, I'll basically tell it to generate cross Ryan. And I'm not going to say anything more than that, and AI is going to obviously be able to pick up on what I'm trying to say. So here comes the cross-examination of Ryan, the father, employment and income foundation, insurance availability and terms, and then knowledge of Maya's medical condition in this case is very important to be able to show that he knows what's going on and he's just doing nothing. The insurance barrier is his gatekeeper role is, and he is the gatekeeper in this case, and we need that gate open. And the request and refusal that's taken place. The impeachment of hardship claims in case he tries to raise that as an issue. We have questions ready to go back after him with that. And as we scroll down here, we find that we've generated 65 cross-examination questions just that quick before we even make it to court. Now, strategic notes for trial, even AI will give it a little bit of its 2 cents worth. It says, counselor, a few tactical considerations. Pace and pause after questions 31, 35, 62, and 63. Allow some silence. Let the weight of the admission settle with the court. Impeachment sequence is questions 42 to 52. Final question 64, 65. Objection anticipation. Expect relevance objections on the lifestyle spending questions. Your response, Your Honor, the witness has placed its financial capacity at issue by claiming hardships. These questions go directly to the credibility of that claim. Now, next I get down, shall I draft a statement of facts for your trial brief, or will you prefer a proposed order for the court to sign? Well, let's give the court create a trial brief to present to the court before trial. And so now I'm going to come over here, and any of you that are trial litigators know about trial briefs generally are submitted before you start the trial. Now this shows what's happening. He's working. He's reading the skill file. Now I'll create the trial brief. It's a professional legal document for filing in Monroe Circuit Court. It even knows the court basically that we're operating in, and it's creating a JavaScript. And many times when I see the JavaScript means nothing to me. I don't work in script or don't work in JavaScript. But when this gets done, it'll basically create a document that I should be able to download either to copy and paste as a Word document, or it might even create a PDF document. In any event, the JavaScript that it creates, I don't have to work with the JavaScript, but if I wanted to and knew how basically to handle JavaScript, I'd be in great shape because that's what's going to be generated here in just a second. Normally on this go around, it takes just probably maybe a minute. 2 minutes would be considered probably pretty long, with the exception it's creating a trial brief. Now, this is an important phase that we're going to go through because this is where we can see a lot of potential for hallucination. I've had multiple cases where AI has printed out a trial brief, let's say hypothetically, and it's cited Indiana cases and proper citations. It looks marvelous. I remember one case right before I was going into court. I didn't have a lot of time and I needed some quick research, so I jumped into, at that time, ChatGPT and said, give me my arguments for A, B, and C. In one section, it gave me 5 cases that were directly on point to my issue. And I thought, oh my goodness, it can't get any better than this. But what ended up happening, those 5 cases were all hallucinations. The case was not real. The citation, even though on the surface it looked real, was clearly not. Now this is, to me, I just think it's just magical. If you look, and it talks first over here on the left, the document summary. The trial brief is formatted in accordance with Indiana practice standards for Monroe Circuit Court and includes a caption. There's our caption for the case. It includes an introduction. Here's our introduction for the trial brief, just how I normally do things. Statement of facts. Here's your statement of facts. I would trust that those statement of facts are spot on. I believe that they'll be very accurate. It goes on to talk about arguments. 4 sections. Court's authority to be involved in this area. Best interest standard, and when we deal with family law cases to start with, best interest is always a standard that the courts look to, whether it's custody modification or whatever it might be. Impeachment of hardship claims. We're anticipating that Ryan Chittister is going to make a claim that it's a hardship for him. Narrowing tailored relief. Established that the court constitute a qualifying life event for immediate enrollment. Also down here at the bottom, it tells me that it could do some other stuff. Is that, and we may in fact look at that in a second. Now, as I scroll down here and you look at this, if I like this, and sometimes I do, it's properly formatted, is that everything's looking pretty good, is that I just kind of keep scrolling down there. Now, what I always do after I get something of this nature, then I'll save it. And I usually will go up here and click, and I'm going to open it into my Google Drive because this will now, I have it interfacing with my Google Docs. So I can take this over here and open it into my Google Drive. And then when I get it in my Google Drive, then I can come over here, save this, and save it as a working document. And I then can take it back through other AIs and LexisNexis, something like that, and just see what is real and what is not real, and be prepared to take that to the next level. So once again, is that this can do about anything we want it to do. I love Claude; it's fantastic. And if I go back over here into the Notebook LM, when I get done generating the stuff that I just generated, many times I'll come back over and I'll actually put that back into the notebook and add to the notebook throughout. Now, is that I'll come back on here in a few minutes. I'm going to take a short little break and piece things together, and then we can discuss the next degree of things.